one thing you said just caught me unaware. Apparently when you were young, you didn't dream of being a soccer player. You dreamt of being an owner.
Right.
There's going to be millions of schoolboys who, when they find that out, are thinking, is this man insane? Tell us more about your dreams of actually being an owner as opposed to a player.
I didn't know what it meant. I didn't have anything to substantiate it, but I used to play video games a lot as a kid, and instead of actually playing the game, I was more interested in playing the ownership mode. And so because of that, I liked the idea of being able to impact sort of all the different parts of a team and an organization and a club, and that was always interesting to me. So because of that, that was sort of my first real dream. Soccer, because we didn't have Major League Soccer, I didn't watch soccer on TV, it was just sort of a fun hobby that I could do, but I never really thought of it as something that would pan out the way it did.
And then now that you've retired, a lot of your colleagues go into media work and pundit work, and we know who the guys are and we heard their opinions. Others go into something like retiring and just getting away from the game. You've thrown yourself back in, and I think it wouldn't be an understatement to say you've already got more than you bargained for.
Sure.
In trying to help this team. Any regrets so far, or are you really enjoying it?
No, I'm really enjoying this effort to bring an MLS team to San Diego. What I didn't expect was that there would be this level of negativity from it. It's good because it's just a few people, but I didn't realize there would be that much venom towards a sport that I love and something that we're trying to do that's good for the community. So that's been a little bit interesting for me. I've probably already qualified for a major in political science and economics just over the last few months based on what I've seen and heard and been privy to. I love learning, and this is something I am really passionate about and throwing my life into. And it's frustrating at times, but it's still been a lot of fun.
Do you think the root of this is really that good old American anti-soccer thing that you've known all your life and I've had to deal with?
I think there are two pieces to the opposition to bring an MLS team here. One is there's an old guard of people that have sort of controlled San Diego from the periphery behind the scenes for a long time. And nobody knows who they are, they don't know their names, but behind the scenes politically, etc., they've sort of controlled San Diego and basically done what they've wanted when they want to. So that's one piece of it, because we're a new, younger group of people who they're looking at saying, wait, who are these guys? They're not one of us. The other piece is, I think there is I don't want to pit it as American football crowd versus soccer crowd, but there's sort of we don't understand soccer and we don't understand what it's about crowd, and a closed-mindedness around that has said, well, why would we bring a soccer team here? We used to have an American football team here. Those teams get 70,000 people. Soccer draws 25,000. So they can't really wrap their mind around, and I think that's been difficult for some people.
And now that you are involved, and you talked about a political old guard and all the degrees that you could have picked up, you're hanging around with Nick, who we talked to before, and a lot of very, very rich guys, which, well, other than you played at the Galaxy, is unusual for a soccer player, to be honest. Right. So I'm coming to probably the question that you didn't want me to ask, but I've got a job to do. I mean, there's a guy who's 3 years ahead of you, and that's David Beckham, who's been trying to get this together for 3 years. Have you talked to him at all about these newfound perils of meeting these businessmen? Do you talk a lot about it?
No, we haven't spoken a lot about it, but at times when we cross paths, it's interesting to pick his brain a little bit. And I think, especially for David, who's come from England where football, soccer is everything. He's been in Madrid, been in Italy, where if you said, I want to bring a soccer team to a city in Italy or Spain or England, people would say, yeah, what can we do for you? And now you get to America and you say, I want to do something great for Miami, in David's instance. I want to do something great that'll bring soccer here, invigorate the community, do something great here. And then he sees resistance to it, and it's a little bit of a head scratcher for him. And so as he's gone through that, and now we're going through a little bit of that process, it's, there is some commonality in it, and in realizing that it's not still where we want it to be in this country like it is in the rest of the world.
That's a very good point. For you, when your USMNT career, and we the media are to blame, we're always talking up how much growth soccer has made, and it's the next big thing, and every journalist who's worth their salt has written that article at some point. Did you ever actually believe journalists when they were writing it, or were you always aware that they were maybe playing it up?
No, I knew people were playing it up to some extent in the beginning, because for all of us who love this game, whether you want to admit it or not, everybody wants the game to succeed. And so you'll have writers that take the position of being negative and beating down MLS. But if they're true soccer people and love this game, they're probably just doing it because it's shtick and it's, creating some work for them and a job for them. But we're all in this together. There's no other sport where you have media, fans, players, executive, owners who are not only in it for the business side, but they're also ambassadors trying to grow the game. Every other sport in this country is already established, so they don't need that. But we have dealt with the really bad days in the beginning where, there were 6,000 people in the stadium. And now as we see it grow and flourish, we're really proud of it because we've dug in and fought every step of the way. So I see that. Some people who are just seeing MLS now for the first time, they don't really get that, and they don't see the growth and the progress and the dedication of the people involved. So it's probably hard for them to wrap their minds around.
One of the things you said on one of your many radio interviews in the last week or so is that when you were feeling low or frustrated, the people you met at the signature initiative really boosted your morale.
Yeah.
So talk me through that. When you met these guys, maybe, I don't know, some were young and didn't see all of your career, but you saw that these guys were just soccer mad. Yeah. What did that do to your morale? Did that kind of vindicate a lot of what you've done over your entire career?
Yes, and through this process specifically, there have been times over the last few months where you have a day where people are writing articles that are bashing you, or people are talking poorly about you. Things are coming out along the way that don't paint a good picture for you. But you come back to two things. One, I sit in this office a lot of days of the week, and I sit next to guys who are multi-millionaires, very wealthy people, and you sit and talk to them and they say, this is hard for me because I've worked my entire life, built from nothing to create this wealth, and now I want to do something for San Diego that I'm proud of, that gives something to San Diego, and people are fighting me on it. And that feels really bad. And so I actually gain strength from that because I want to help them accomplish their goals. And the other piece of it is when I go out in the town and I talk to people, inevitably if I walk down the street right now, people will come up to me and say, thank you so much for what you're doing to bring Major League Soccer here. Every person I have not come across one person who says, what are you guys doing? This doesn't really make sense. Why would you bring an MLS team? Everybody I come across says, thank you so much for the effort you're putting in. And honestly, that's the only reason we keep going, because with some of the bad news you hear and some of the things that happen, it's easy to say, you know what? I don't need this. I'm retired now. I got a kid at home. Why would I do this? But you almost feel like you're fighting the fight for the people that really want this, and that keeps you going.
Do you find a certain bizarreness that as an ex-player, you're being stopped as often on the streets of San Diego as you might have been as a player in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I'm honestly probably stopped more because of what's gone on with this MLS team push than I would have been otherwise. I think people who are paying attention, they're seeing us on the radio, or they're hearing us on the radio, seeing us on TV. We're in the news constantly, and that's, for me, it's fine. I'm used to the public light. For some of our guys who are very private here, it's been interesting for them. But I think in the end, we come back to the same thing. We are trying to do something that is good for this city. And if you believe in that and you care about that and you're passionate about it, none of the other stuff matters.
Picking up on what you said about passion, obviously having watched you play both at international and at club level, I don't think anyone can doubt that intensity. Once that whistle goes as part of who you are in your game, you weren't one of these guys that smiled through a game and were aware of what the crowd was doing. You were very, very focused. Mm-hmm. I'm particularly thinking, I think that game where you beat RSL 5-0, I think that was the best club performance by one side. How does that intensity that you brought to the pitch compare to the intensity of the boardroom and the office and the laptop?
It's the same. And it's it's invigorating in that way because I'm getting to compete again. And it's in a totally different arena, something that's really foreign to me. But every time we get a piece of the opposition saying something nasty or false or trying to tear us down, I get more motivated. And it's very, I mean, I competed for a living, right? So I know how to compete. And when the odds get stacked against you, I compete more, right? And I fight more and I go more. So that for me has been actually invigorating. It's life-giving, because if you go through retirement, you're used to this life where you're competing for 15 years and you just go home and sit around all day. It's, you know, it can be depressing, it can be demoralizing a little bit, and now I have the opportunity to go try to fight for something I believe in, and it's been really good for me.
More in the figurative sense than the actual medical sense, do you get an adrenaline from doing this? At
times, yeah. I mean, on the soccer field, the adrenaline comes immediately, right? So, but there are moments where things happen and it's time to go and act and we got to do something, and you get fired up and you get that same feeling. And this is a big, big goal that we have here that we're looking at, and we are fighting really hard for it, and it's more than just one game. It's almost like playing the season out all at one time, and it's been an interesting process.
If they had the choice between, you know, the big map of the USA, and there's a massive big hole with no MLS team in it, and they're desperate to put St. Louis there or Cincinnati there, but following the Cascadian experience, the commissioner's very keen on rivalries.
Yeah.
Which do you think of those two factors is more pressing in MLS's mind, filling out the country geographically or create more rivalries?
It's a good question. It's only a question that Garber can answer himself. I think what he has learned from his time at the NFL and his time here in Major League Soccer is that rivalries fuel sports, right? And so, you know, if the Oakland Raiders play Tampa Bay, it's an exciting game, but it doesn't have the same feel as if the Oakland Raiders play the San Francisco 49ers, right, where they're right across the bay from each other. And he learned, and we all learned, when New York Red Bull were struggling a little bit, and then Man City came into, New York City FC, Man City came into the league, all of a sudden New York Red Bulls attendance, the way they treated their club, the way they put resources in, everything went through the roof. And competition is good. Competition is what this country has been built on. And Garber has seen that, and he knows that rivalries are important. And so immediately, if you have a team here in San Diego, there are two teams in LA that you have an immediate rivalry with. There's a team across the border that's not in Major League Soccer, but that in Tijuana, that would be, you could have a friendly game that would have more passion and emotion than probably most cup finals would around the world immediately. And then you have all of California with San Jose and maybe Sacramento that you can have this California rivalry with. So I think he understands that very clearly, and he knows how important San Diego is to that piece of it.
Leading on from that question, you're no stranger to the rival with Mexico, as anyone who's watched your career knows, but for the good of this bid and this club, are you ready to talk smack against the Galaxy? That's what it takes.
Well, listen, I love the Galaxy. They've obviously meant so much to me, not only professionally, but personally. So that is the only piece of this whole process that gave me pause. I was ready to jump on board, but I took the time to call Chris Klein, the president of the Galaxy, and talk to him about it, talk him through it. And he was very clear. I used to room with Chris Klein, so he knows me. And he said, Landon, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And if you don't take it, you will always regret it. And so that was all I needed to hear. And I mean, every weekend I root for the Galaxy, probably harder than anybody. I do hope that one day we're playing against them, and there are foes. But until that point, I will be the biggest Galaxy fan.
As you know, Nick is an Englishman and a Londoner, and you can guess what his answer would have been to this question. So I'm saving it for you. You've seen Portland Timbers as PTFC, Seattle Sounders as Seattle Sounders FC. In Orlando, they call it SC. Is your club going to be an SC or an FC?
It's a good question. It may be neither. We might not attach a soccer club or football club to it. I see, and I don't want to waffle here, but I see both sides of the argument, right? I've lived this game and I understand the importance across the globe of what football or foosball means around the world. But there's also something cool about having an American slant to it, right? And maybe it doesn't resonate now yet, but in 100 years, if people look back and say, well, this is soccer and this is the sport we love and it's bigger than every other sport in this country, it's cool that we had our own kind of slant to it. So I see both sides. I don't have an answer to the question, partially because we're going to let the fans help decide, and so that'll be a piece of it, but it's, to me, it's sort of irrelevant in the end. I always say soccer. It's what I've known and what I've grown up with, and so I probably lean that way. But in the end, we'll let the fans decide, and I'll be fine with whatever. If we're having that discussion, that's a good problem to have.
Over the last few months, have you felt more like a politician than a business owner?
Some days you feel like a politician. I'm not really good at the political side because people who have known me and have interviewed me for a long time know that I just speak my mind. I don't play games. I don't do talking points. I just kind of, I say what I feel and I speak from the heart. And, it's gotten me in trouble at times, but at least I come back to, at least I was being honest. So nobody can ever say I was trying to deceive them or lie. And this process has been tricky because I'm not used to this world, and it's like going into a penalty shootout against somebody who's never kicked a soccer ball before, right? I'm the guy who's never kicked a soccer ball in this instance. So it's interesting for me. I love learning. The learning process has been great. What I don't like is the slandering sometimes, the muddling of facts, the things that people try to do to tear you down it's disheartening for me, but I understand that it's part of the process.
So would you say, I'm just pulling two names out of the hat, a post-match question, an interview from the likes of Scott French, how do you handle that differently from the interview you've been doing with Dan Soleo and Darren Smith on the radio? How do you differ in the way you handle them?
They're really not different for me. I was never one to hide things, and I kind of just wore my heart on my sleeve. And so, you have to always be, when you're in front of the camera, in front of the media, you have to be a little bit careful about how you're presenting things or what you're saying. But in the end, I believe in what I'm doing. And so if we played a game and we played poorly, I'd say we were awful. If I played a game where I played poorly, I'd say I was awful tonight and I got to be better. And this is the same. If we do something along the way that I don't think is right or is doing what's in the best interest of ourselves or the city, I'll say it. I have no problem. And I've said it. I've said things publicly on the radio where I'd say, I said the other day, the deal that Nick negotiated with the city, if I was Nick's boss, I probably wouldn't be happy about it. He gave a lot of concessions to the city and to San Diego State that I probably wouldn't have been okay with if I were his boss. But in the end, I know what his intentions were, and his motivation was to try to get something done, so he did the right thing. You
and somebody who's closely integrated in your career, Bruce Arena, are now doing something quite different to what you guys were doing 3-4 years ago. Do you ever talk to Bruce and agree, wow, how we wish for simpler times?
Bruce and I, now that we're away from each other, we're not working with each other every day, we have good conversations. And, Bruce and I haven't always had a perfect relationship, but we have tremendous respect for one another. And he is absolutely the right person to be guiding this team right now in the most tumultuous time our national team has had in, 20 plus years, since 90, since they qualified for the 90 World Cup. So I'm happy for him. I know he will be successful, and we have a lot of good conversations. And one day we're going to sit around a table and just talk about all the crazy stuff that's happened in our lives and be proud of it.